Hello everyone, Kevin with the Fly Guys, here with a tutorial video on how to tie a fly we like to call the Kempen Kracken. It's caught us a lot of stock rainbow trout, a lot of bass, a lot of bluegill. We think it'll do very well for you. It's a modern variation of the squirmy worm, but with the newer materials it gets a lot more life, gets a lot more action, and we'd like to share it. Thank you so much for watching. When compared to these great patterns, the Kracken gets a lot more action, as you'll be able to tell even by simply spinning this around in a vise. These are the materials I frequently use. This pattern works great on jig hooks, but other hooks can be used. Use any thread you feel comfortable with. The use of Hareline's mini squiggly worms gives many advantages to this fly. Senyo's shaggy dub is another key component and gives a lot of action. I prefer tungsten beads, but any bead will do. If using a jig hook, make sure you use a slotted bead. This helps orient the bead closer to the hook eye. Start by sliding the hook point through the small hole. Now let's start wrapping behind the bead in touching wraps all the way down to the shank of the hook. Once there, snip the tag end clean. We will be attaching the squiggly worm from the bend of the hook going forward. Make 2 loose collecting wraps near that point, then take a turn in front and then one in back before cinching down. This will help prevent cutting into the silicone material and keep it in place from sliding forward or backward. Now let's advance the thread a few turns on the hook shank to the midpoint of the fly and repeat the procedure with 2 loose collecting wraps. Remember to take a few loops around the hook shank before cinching down on the thread. Let's advance the thread to just behind the bead and do the exact same. Give a slight tug on the leftover material and snip clean. I use this technique to add the shaggy dub around the line. Then I tie the line to the hook. This really seems to help out and keep everything straight and oriented. I only use a little clump at a time, and then I make touching wraps forward as we go. You can do this to your liking and create as many fibers as you want, and then also remember to turn the hook through the vise so that you orient the fibers all the way through and get a really clean pattern, a well dispersed pattern all the way up and down the fly. Now let's use that technique to actually wrap onto the fly. One thing to note is to always make sure that you're wrapping forward. If you wrap back by mistake, it'll really hinder and push back some of those fibers, and it'll keep them pinned down or keep them pinned back. So be careful to make sure that you're always progressing forward. You can sweep the fibers back with your fingers if you need to, and you can put as much on as you'd like. The shaggy dub is actually polyurethane material. It withstands UV light and it won't break down in the heat or humidity like plasticized rubber does. As you're adding this dub, make sure you rotate the vise so that the fibers are dispersed all the way through, and you'll have to keep preening and pruning as you go to make a really well-dressed fly. And don't worry if some of the fibers get caught in loops or just caught in the thread, we'll be able to clean that up later. Now let's sweep most of the fibers back and make a collar with 4 or 5 turns. Once you feel you have enough of this dubbing on, you can whip finish like I'm doing here by your hands, or you can use a tool as I'll show in a second here. Now let's go ahead and cut the thread, being very careful not to cut any fibers that we've just put on. Now it's time to clean up the fly. I like to rotate the fly in the vise and cut the fibers down, the dubbing down to about 1/3 of the length of the entire worm. As we go through and clean the fly up, you'll notice that the integrity of the silicone worm is actually not compromised at all by that method with the loose collecting wraps. This lets the fly stand up very well and gives it a lot of longevity. The silicone material isn't punctured like if you'd have to thread it on the hook, nor is it compromised at all or cut into by doing that method. Let's go ahead and sweep some of the fibers back and put just a drop of Zap-A-Gap on the top and then rotate it around and do the exact same thing. Be careful not to use too much glue because you can glue some of those fibers together and really kill the action of the fly. I like to just drop it down the bead. And here's our finished fly. Thanks for watching, and I hope it catches you a lot of fish.